Hello and welcome. Today I want to show you my first PC built by me. I've chosen all parts by myself based on my research and tons of YouTube videos. So this was my setup. All the parts will be listed in the description. Starting with the case. SilentiumPC Ventum. Really nice and spacey white case, which was the priority in this build. Side panel made with the plexiglass for the inside view, other side with the decent space for all the cables and fan drivers, closed for the view. Got already 4 RGB fans installed inside with the driver in the back. Separate basement for the power supply with the space for all the cables. On the front panel, 2 USB 3.0 jack for audio and microphone. Also power and reset button. Really solid base for the whole setup. The motherboard. ASUS ROG Strix B660, a gaming with Wi-Fi. Really good ATX board for Intel 12th generation processors. DDR4 REM's memories and PCIe Express 5.0 for the graphic card. Also, what made me to choose this board are white and silver covers and coolers on the upper part, which will help with the performance and those perfectly fit visually to the setup. Processor. Intel Core i5-12400F is the classical solution for such gaming work setup. F in the name stands for the without integrated graphics, much cheaper than the version with the graphics included, efficient and in good price processor for my needs. The purchase included the radiator with the thermal paste already put on, but I decided to go with the AEO solution, what will be showed in a couple of seconds. So first of all, there is an arrow on the processor and on the socket, what I already showed, which is telling in what direction you should put the processor. Usually it is in the left bottom corner. Additionally, the 12th generation of processors got the shape of rectangle and also got those small tabs on the top and the bottom edge. So at least in case of Intel's, it is impossible to insert incorrectly processor into the motherboard socket. And that I also found in the instruction of my motherboard. So don't be afraid as much as I was during that. To finish installation of the processor, just press the cover until it clicks. After that, the plastic cover should pop up or almost pop up like in my case. And then use the lever to trap the processor in the socket. REM memory. Corsair 16 GB Vengeance White RGB Pro. In case of parameters, I think it is really decent memory. In case of appearance, white color and RGB, it looks even better when it's on. During the installation, make sure you're doing it in the right direction. For the storage memory, I chose the Samsung 1TB M2 SSD, quite popular with good price, made him the choice of mine. To install this memory, first of all you need a screwdriver to take off the cover from the motherboard, then put the memory in the pocket at a slight angle. When it's on, put the card to make this lie on the motherboard and screw. After that, put the cooler cover back on its place and also screw. Don't forget to remove the safety foil, which is under the cover by default. So we got the processor, REM memory and SSD already in the motherboard. Now it's time for the cooling system for the processor. I choose the water cooling from Corsair, iCUE H100i Elite CAPELLIX White with 2 120mm fans. It will perfectly cool the core and fit with the design with those RGB lights. First of all, find the back bracket for your processor, then gently pull up the motherboard and screw the bracket on the backside of the motherboard. There is also a bracket for AMD in the set. There is a 3M tape on the bracket which helps with the placement on the back of the board. Then on the front side, place special screws for the socket, needed to point out during the order about the 12th generation of the processor. In the end, the installation kit for the 12th generation looks almost the same as the previous, but better be safe than sorry. Then assembly the fans on the cooler with the screws. Make sure how you place your fans. In my case, I wanted to blow out the air through the cooler outside the case, so needed the logo to the front. It is the suction side. Take a quick note about the fans position on the cooler. Place them in such way to make the shortest path for the cables to the back of the case. It will make easier whole cable management job in the end. And for the finish line, make sure the fans are screwed properly and holding tight to the cooler. Also, if you want to use already applied thermal paste on the pump, make sure the plastic cover is on the pump and protects the paste. Now it's time to put the motherboard inside of the case, but just before that, it will be easier to remove the rear case fan. To place the motherboard in case, it is good to prepare the case with special, in my case, 9 screws for the installation. So before taking in hand the motherboard, make sure the wall is prepared and those 9 screws are correctly tied up. Those gonna hold the board, so you know. After that, grab gently motherboard by, for example, cooler and covers and place it inside. Make sure the holes in the board are in line with prepared special screws. Then fasten it to the case with another 9 screws. Later, put back on the rear side the blowout fan and also use your screwdriver again to make it stable. Having that all done, prepare yourself for another step. Now, having motherboard inside, I can place the pump on the socket. Thermal paste was already applied on the back surface of the pump and the cooler with fans on the upper side of the case. After a few trials, I decided to start with the horizontal position of the case, use at least 2 screws for the cooler, and then pick the case up and finish the screwing. Remember about plugging in the pump to the AEO socket for the power. If you don't have one, you can plug it to the fan socket on the motherboard, but later don't forget to set maximum speed in the BIOS. Now it's time for the backend. First of all, plug into the Corsair driver the cable from the pump. Make sure it's pressed down properly. Then take the cables from the cooler fans. They are 2 from each fan. One is for RGB and the second one is for the, let's call it, fan rotation. And don't worry, cables and driver sockets are labeled, so there is no place for mistake. Graphics. It's NVIDIA RTX 3060 from Gigabyte. Take out gently the card from the box and then from the anti-static safety foil. Beautiful white and silver card with 3 fans. Ideal for this build. The most expensive thing in the setup, but totally worth. It is needed to empty 2 slots in the backside of the case. In addition to that, do not forget to remove the additional cover in the back of the case to be able to insert the card. Then, just put the card in the fastest PCI Express slot until it clicks. For the power supply, I chose the Corsair RM White 750 watts with the 80 plus gold certificate. It is much more power than I really need right now in this build, but keeping the space for the further modifications. Also wanted it to be white and have at least gold certificate. It came with tons of cables, but what I really need is the PCI Express for the CPU, PCI Express for the graphic card, SATA supply for the Corsair driver, and 24 pins for the motherboard supply. Make sure that you put your cables properly, not too loose. I left the hardest part, cable management, for the end of the building, and that moment I just put the power supply in the basement of the case, screwed it to the back of the case, and plugged things I mentioned earlier. So now, final test for my journey. Will it work? Frankly speaking, I was really nervous that I messed something up. We're talking about the big money. So I turned the switch of the power supply and then slowly the power button. The inside of the setup started to light with colors. Then BIOS turned it on and yeah, I must admit I was cheering like a 10-year-old boy as you can see. In that time I was not expecting that this will look as awesome as it is. There was an error from the BIOS, but completely not dangerous in my case. BIOS was expecting the CPU plug, but I got the AEO, so later I had to tell him manually to ignore this issue because processor is cooled. Anyway, the final effect is stunning. I was so excited and happy that, first of all, everything is working as it should, and the main thing, it looks so good. The effect of the lightning is, as I mentioned earlier, much better than I could have imagined before. I was really proud of myself that I chose all the parts alone and got such cool effect in the end. So really hyped up, especially by AEO Lightning, which is doing the phenomenal job along with the case fans in the front and one in the rear side. Also, the RAM memory got me very surprised. It makes big part of the effect too, I think, that even more than the fans, especially when it's synchronized with the pump lightning. All in all, the final result is stunning. You can see, I was very happy. So the next day, I took care about the cable management. Okay, I must admit, it is not really professional job, but it is better than it was. And finally, I was able to close the case with the back cover. And then, with the plexiglass on the view side, secured with 4 screws and safety foil. Also make sure that those are tied up with enough power and the project is finally finished. Of course, there's a software part of that, but the build is done. After that, power check and lights went on. Thank you guys for watching and for assisting me in this journey. That was my first ever PC builded by myself. If you got any questions about this, don't hesitate to ask in the comment section. Also, please leave a like and subscribe, and I hope I see you guys in the next video. Bye bye.